Alright, time for a classic Resident Evil weapon, the Grenade Launcher. M79 Grenade Launcher. It's the same one they used in Resident Evil 2, by the way. This uses 40mm rounds. Alright, so, of course, it has multiple kinds of rounds, and this one they have 4 rounds, kind of like Resident Evil 3. So you got the regular grenade rounds, also known as explosive rounds. Then you got the flame rounds, the acid rounds, but then instead of freeze rounds, you got BOW gas rounds. And this is the only game, in the main series anyway, that has gas rounds. The only other game besides the main series, I believe, was Resident Evil Gaiden. Alright, so I'm gonna test the grenade launcher and all 4 types of rounds. Alright, so I'm not going to test all 4 rounds on the same enemy. I got an enemy for the explosive rounds, and I got another enemy for both the flame rounds and acid rounds, and then I got another enemy for the gas rounds. So I'm going to test the explosive rounds on the gulp worm. Alright, so it took 7 grenade rounds to take down the gulp worm. That gulp worm is kinda sorta powerful, but those explosive rounds also pretty powerful since it's spreading like that. And if you get all of them in one hit like that, I think the damage is pretty high. So there you go, 7 shots, and I defeated it just in time. If that didn't kill it, I would have been dead and I would have had to restart. So I'm glad it happened there. Alright. That is it for the explosive rounds, so you would think I'm going to test all the rounds on the gulp worm. Well, unfortunately, I don't have enough of the other types of rounds to defeat the gulp worm at this current save. I have another save where I have more rounds, but the gulp worm is already defeated. So I'm going to have to test the other rounds on a different enemy. So I've decided to test both the flame rounds and the acid rounds on the albinoid. Alright, so 7 flame rounds to take down the albinoid, and the only way I could speak about it more is if I compare it to the acid rounds, so now let's try those. Alright, so unfortunately I screwed up in preparation for this weapon review. I happened to miss some acid rounds on my way to this save point. So I only have 6 here when I could have had 12. And I recorded the test on the albinoid, and 6 acid rounds is not enough to defeat it. And I figured so because I am convinced that the acid rounds are the weakest round in the game. Unlike Resident Evil 1 and 2, where it was usually the strongest. So, in that case, you can dang well be sure that the acid rounds are going to take more than 7 hits, because that's how much the flame rounds took. And here, let me tell you this. The acid rounds are so weak that a zombie can take more than 1 acid round. I've witnessed it a couple times. That should be what really matters to you right now, is the fact that the acid rounds are pretty weak, and I wouldn't recommend them for anything really, unless there's a specific type of enemy that are susceptible to acid rounds. So, this is going to be a time where I don't really have an enemy to test the round on, because I mean, there are other enemies that will go down in 6 rounds or less, but the only one I could really think of right now is a zombie. But the fact that I'm using all the rounds on all different enemies, it's not a great way to compare the firepower between them. After playing through this game a couple times, I can conclude that the flame rounds are the strongest round out of all of them. But hey, we haven't even reviewed one of the rounds yet. That is the BOW gas round. And there is actually a perfect enemy to test those on. And that is the tyrant that you face on the plane with Claire. You kind of want to save those 3 rounds for him, because this is a strategy every Code Veronica pro knows. Just bring those 3 rounds and 4 explosive bowgun arrows, and then you will defeat the tyrant, because the ultimate way to defeat him is to push him off the plane using a huge load that you catapult on him. The point of the BOW gas rounds is to weaken an enemy, and from what I heard, 1 gas round lowers an enemy's health points by half for each one. So using 3 rounds should lower his health down to just an 1/8 of what it was. That's what I'm assuming. Alright, so let's go ahead and show that real quick. So there you go. That's basically the best way to use the BOW gas rounds in the entire game. If you plan on using them somewhere else, then I would definitely recommend boss battles only, because that's its purpose, is to lower their health quite dramatically. Alright, so that is it for the BOW gas rounds, and that is it for the grenade launcher. Alright, now for the last weapon in the regular game, the linear launcher. Anti-BOW linear launcher. An advanced weapon developed to handle BOWs. So the only time you get to use this is at the very end of the game, and you use it to defeat Alexia Ashford. And it is the only way you can defeat her. You have to use regular weaponry to get her to her final form, which will unlock the linear launcher for you when that occurs. And then it's simply a game of hitting her. And it's somewhat difficult because she moves around a lot, but once you get that hit off, the game literally ends with that final shot, like the original Resident Evil. Alright, so unlike the original version of this review, I finally unlocked the linear launcher in Battle Game. And the requirement for that is to get an A rank with all the characters, which I found out really isn't that tough. So I don't know why I didn't do it in my original version. But I did it here, and I'm going to review the linear launcher before the enemy testing. So let's look at it real quick. So yeah, it's like a projectile launcher of some sort, specifically for BOWs. Alright, so now let's test it properly on the only appropriate enemy, really. We're testing it on Alexia Ashford, and watching the massive explosion that comes along with it in the cutscene. And that would be the end of the game right there. However, it is not the end of the weapon review. There is one more weapon left. So that is it for the linear launcher. Alrighty, time for the final weapon of the game, the rocket launcher. Another name for a rocket launcher is bazooka. You can defeat most enemies with 1 shot. It's pretty typical. Alright, so this is the only weapon in the game that you can't use anywhere in it. You can only use this as an unlockable. And you unlock this by completing the game with an A rank. And there's specific conditions in order to get an A rank, but really, if you play the game enough, it is not that hard, in my opinion. Alright, let's test out the rocket launcher. massive explosions as usual. Alright, so for the rocket launcher, I'm just gonna do what I've been always doing. I'm gonna test it on a plethora of enemies, so enjoy the show. Alright, well, that concludes my HD weapon review of Resident Evil Code Veronica X. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was nice to come back to a classic game and do another weapon review of it, and my previous version weapon review of this game really needed to be remade. If you watch it on my other channel, you will see why it was so horrible. The sound is really bad, and the visuals could be a lot better, really. But yeah, finally remade it, and here you go. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Now, from this point on is mostly a message for my subscribers, so if you're a regular viewer and are tired of my voice, I really urge you to end the video now, and I don't want to hear any crap about my voice afterward, because I just warned you, and if you still do it, you're just an asshole. Now, I have remade this weapon review, and I really have no intention of remaking any more for now. Now, I know some of you are like, well, there's the remaster of Resident Evil Remake and the upcoming remaster of Resident Evil 0. And my current weapon reviews of those two games are not in HD, really. So that is a possibility. I could remake those two weapon reviews too if I want to. But I'm going to hold off on that for a little bit. So I bet you're wondering, well, what's your next video then? Because you are done with all weapon reviews and all melee move reviews that you could possibly do, because there are no more games to review. So what's next? Well, some of you who I actually talked to before may know what I originally intended to do after I finished all the weapon reviews was to begin Let's Plays of the Resident Evil series. And I am going to do that. However, before I begin that, in celebration of completing both the melee move reviews and the weapon reviews, I'm gonna make two special videos for you guys before I begin Let's Plays. What they are, I am not gonna tell. Some of you may actually know what I'm talking about, because I told you about it when you asked me what I'm gonna do after all weapon reviews are done. But for those of you who don't know, it's gonna remain a surprise until I upload the videos. So I can't really tell you to look forward to anything other than the surprise videos I'm going to make for you. You can guess what they are in the comments, but I'm ultimately not going to tell you. So there you go. Alright, well, that is it for the weapon review. So this is Shankster94, aka TheGamersHankster. Rate, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time in the two surprise videos I have for you. So peace out, stay cool.